No, I am your father.
One actor wore the most famous helmet in cinema and was forbidden from speaking the words spoken inside it. One man was paid around $7,000 to become the voice of evil and refused screen credit because he believed he was a special effect. One hospital orderly stood up to greet a film director in London and ended a career as a nurse the same afternoon. And one knighted Shakespearean took 2.25% of the gross profits and called the dialogue, in his own private letters, fairy tale rubbish. What really happened to the cast of The Empire Strikes Back is darker than anything that ever happened in a galaxy far, far away. Mark Hamill is Luke Skywalker. Mark Richard Hamill was born on September 25, 1951, in Oakland, California, the son of a U.S. Navy captain. 28 years old when Empire premiered, the farm boy who became the trilogy's emotional center. But here's where it gets interesting. On January 11, 1977, days before the final pickups on the original Star Wars, Hamill was in a violent car accident on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles, suffering facial fractures and requiring reconstructive surgery. For decades, fans have speculated that the Wampa attack at the start of Empire was added to explain the slight change in his appearance. Lucasfilm has never confirmed it, but the legend persists. Then came the role almost no one expected. For more than 30 years, Hamill has voiced the Joker across the DC animated universe, a performance widely considered the definitive version of the character. In 2023, the Ukrainian Air Alert app launched its English-language version narrated by him. After every warning, his voice signs off with,
"May the Force be with you."
May the Force be with you. Mark Hamill is 75 in 2026. The boy who almost lost his face on a freeway became the voice the world reaches for when the bombs come. Harrison Ford is Han Solo.
I love you.
I know.
Harrison Ford was born on July 13, 1942, in Chicago. 37 years old when Empire premiered. The smuggler, the cynic, the romantic who would not say it back when she said it first. But here is where the real story begins. What audiences in 1980 did not know was that the chemistry on screen between Han and Leia was the residue of something already finished. In her 2016 memoir, The Princess Diarist, Carrie Fisher revealed a 3-month affair on the set of the original Star Wars in 1976. She was 19. Ford was 33, married, with 2 young sons. By the time Empire began filming, the affair was a closed chapter, and both pretended it had never happened. After 2 long marriages, Ford met Callista Flockhart at the 2002 Golden Globes. She was a young mother carrying a 4-year-old adopted son named Liam. They married in 2010, and Ford legally adopted Liam shortly after. In a 2025 interview with NPR's Wildcard podcast, Ford said, "Old people can love too. Staying in love is the issue. Maintaining, nurturing, basically, not effing it up." Harrison Ford is 83 in 2026. He spent his career playing men who could not say it back. He spent his real life learning how. Carrie Fisher is Princess Leia.
What the hell are you doing?
Somebody has to save our skins.
Carrie Frances Fisher was born on October 21, 1956, in Burbank, California, the daughter of singer Eddie Fisher and actress Debbie Reynolds, 23 years old when Empire premiered. The youngest cast member on screen and the one with the heaviest emotional weight to carry. But here is where it gets interesting. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 24, Fisher rejected the diagnosis until a near-fatal overdose at 28 drove her into rehab. From that moment on, she spent the rest of her life turning her own breakdowns into prose. Postcards from the Edge, Wishful Drinking, The Princess Diarist. She refused to allow mental illness to remain Hollywood's open secret. She was also one of the most in-demand, uncredited script doctors in the industry, polishing dialogue on Sister Act, The Wedding Singer, and parts of the Star Wars prequels. Once asked how she wanted her death reported, she said she wanted it noted that she drowned in moonlight, strangled by her own bra. On December 23, 2016, Carrie Fisher went into cardiac arrest on a flight from London to Los Angeles. She died 4 days later, at 60 years old. Her mother, Debbie Reynolds, suffered a stroke the very next day and died December 28th. Hospital staff later reported Reynolds saying, "I want to be with Carrie." The galaxy's princess was never the princess. She was the writer in the room nobody knew was holding the pen, and the daughter who took her mother with her on the way out. Billy Dee Williams is Lando Calrissian. William December Williams Jr. was born on April 6, 1937, in Harlem, New York City. 42 years old when Empire premiered. the smoothest entrance in the franchise, a betrayer in a cape who spent half a film breaking the audience's trust and the other half winning it back. But here is where it gets interesting. Long before Lando, Williams had already become one of the first black romantic leads in mainstream American cinema. Brian's song in 1971 made grown men weep openly in cinemas. Lady Sings the Blues, opposite Diana Ross in 1972, earned him comparisons to Clark Gable. By the time Lucas came calling for Empire, Williams had already done what Hollywood had been refusing to allow black actors to do for 50 years. He had been the leading man in a love story. In a 2019 Esquire interview, his comments on Carl Jung's anima and animus theory were widely misinterpreted as a coming out as gender fluid. Williams later clarified he had been discussing Jungian psychology, not gender identity. His 2024 memoir, What Have We Here?, told the rest of the story in his own words. Billy Dee Williams is 89 in 2026. They called him the Black Clark Gable, as if it was a compliment. He spent his entire career proving it was an understatement. Anthony Daniels is C3PO. Anthony Daniels was born on February 21, 1946, in Salisbury, England. 34 years old when Empire premiered. A Royal Shakespeare Company trained actor who agreed to climb into a fiberglass and aluminum suit because Ralph McQuarrie's first concept painting looked into his soul. But here is where it gets interesting. Daniels is the only actor to have appeared in all 11 theatrical Star Wars films, plus Solo and Rogue One. His 2019 memoir, I Am C3PO, carefully avoids one subject: his 3-decade off-camera feud with Kenny Baker. The droids audiences loved as inseparable best friends were operated by two men who, by Baker's account, did not exchange a warm word in 40 years. Baker called Daniels the rudest man he ever met. Daniels said the character of R2-D2 might as well be a bucket. When Baker died, Daniels' tribute was 3 sentences long. In 2026, Anthony Daniels is 80. He spent 40 years being the voice of a fussy, polite, lonely robot. Some performances are documentary. Kenny Baker is R2-D2. Kenneth George Baker was born on August 24, 1934, in Birmingham, England. 3 feet, 8 inches tall. 45 years old when Empire premiered. As a child, doctors told his mother he was unlikely to live past puberty. But here is where the real story begins. Before Star Wars, Baker had spent 25 years building a career nobody outside Britain knew about. A clown and ringmaster with Billy Smart's circus, a pantomime and ice show performer, and one half of the Minitones, a musical comedy duo with Jack Purvis that had reached the final of the British talent show Opportunity Knocks. He very nearly turned down R2-D2 because he did not want to break up the act. Lucas told him to name his price. Baker, thinking like a cabaret man, asked for £800 a week. He spent the rest of his life wishing he had asked for more. Kenny Baker died at his home in Preston, Lancashire, on August 13, 2016, at 81 years old, after a long illness. The man inside the most beloved silent character in cinema spent his life on stages where everyone heard him. He went to his grave being thanked for a role in which he never spoke. Frank Oz is Yoda. Frank Richard Osnowitz was born on May 25, 1944, in Hereford, England, to puppeteer parents who emigrated to California when he was 7. 35 years old when Empire premiered, Lucas had originally approached Jim Henson to play Yoda. Henson was busy. He recommended his closest collaborator, the man who was already simultaneously Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Cookie Monster, Bert, Grover, and Animal. But here is where it gets interesting. After Empire, Frank Oz quietly walked away from full-time puppetry and became one of the most reliable comedy directors of the 1980s and 1990s. Little Shop of Horrors, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, What About Bob, Bowfinger, The Score, Death at a Funeral. He returned for every Star Wars film featuring Yoda and refuses, to this day, to perform the Yoda voice outside of an actual Star Wars project. He believes the character deserves the dignity of being kept in one place. In 2026, Frank Oz is 82. The man who taught a generation what wisdom sounded like was also the man who taught it what laughter sounded like. He kept the two voices in different rooms. Alec Guinness is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Sir Alec Guinness was born on April 2, 1914, in Marylebone, London. 63 years old when A New Hope was released, returning briefly as a Force ghost in Empire. By that point, he was already an Oscar winner for The Bridge on the River Kwai, a knight, and one of the most respected stage actors alive. But here is where it gets interesting. In private letters to friends, Guinness called Star Wars fairy tale rubbish. He told the BBC the dialogue was appalling. Carrie Fisher, on the radio show Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, once said that Guinness handed Mark Hamill 20 pounds during filming and asked him to go away because Hamill kept asking him career questions. The story is Fisher's, not a documented incident, but it has become part of the legend. And yet, Guinness had, before agreeing to the role, quietly negotiated a 2.25% share of the gross profits from the film. By the time Empire was released, that share had already made him richer than every classical role of his career combined. In his autobiography, in mock interview voice, he wrote, "Blessed be Star Wars." Alec Guinness died on August 5, 2000, at 86 years old, of complications from liver cancer. He spent 50 years in Shakespeare and Dickens and David Lean. He spent a fortnight in a brown robe saying lines he detested. The brown robe paid for everything else. Jeremy Bulloch is Boba Fett. Jeremy Andrew Bulloch was born on February 16, 1945, in Market Harborough, 35 years old when Empire premiered. Inside a Mandalorian costume so striking that the character became one of the most beloved figures in the franchise on the strength of 4 lines of dialogue. But here is where it gets interesting. Bulloch got the role through nepotism. His half-brother, Robert Watts, was an associate producer on Empire and needed someone who could fit the suit on 20 minutes' notice. Bulloch modeled the character's stillness on Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name. He has said in interviews that he did not realize Boba Fett died in Return of the Jedi until he saw the finished film. Jeremy Bulloch died on December 17, 2020, at 75 years old, of complications from Parkinson's disease. Boba Fett barely spoke, barely moved, barely lived. The actor inside him was, by every account on the convention circuit, the warmest man at every signing he ever attended. Some characters are better than the actors who play them. This was the opposite. Dennis Lawson is Wedge Antilles. Dennis Stamper Lawson was born on September 27, 1947, in Govan, Glasgow, 32 years old when Empire premiered. The only rebel pilot besides Luke to survive every battle in the original trilogy. A face Star Wars fans know without ever quite knowing the name. But here is where it gets interesting. Lawson is the maternal uncle of Ewan McGregor. And when the prequels came calling, Lawson told McGregor not to take the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi. McGregor took it anyway. Lawson himself turned down the chance to return as Wedge in The Force Awakens. He later clarified it was actually a scheduling conflict. He finally returned to the role in 2019's The Rise of Skywalker. Dennis Lawson is 78 in 2026. He spent 40 years pretending Star Wars annoyed him, while his nephew built a career out of taking his advice in reverse. Kenneth Collie is Admiral Piet. Kenneth Collie was born on December 7, 1937, in Manchester, 42 years old when Empire premiered. The only Imperial officer in the entire trilogy to appear in more than one film. Every other admiral and general got force-choked exactly once. But here is where it gets interesting. Outside Star Wars, Collie's career was a parade of the unlikely. He played Jesus in Monty Python's Life of Brian. He played a Soviet Air Force colonel for Clint Eastwood in Firefox. He worked 6 times for the director Ken Russell. He played Napoleon Bonaparte at the moment of his death in a 1990 BBC docudrama. According to his agent, he traveled the world for 40 years signing autographs at conventions without ever quite understanding why anyone wanted them. Kenneth Collie died on June 30, 2025, at 87 years old, of pneumonia following a fall. He was the most recent of the cast to go. The Empire was always more famous than its empire. John Ratzenberger is Major Bren Derlin. John Dezo Ratzenberger was born on April 6, 1947, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, 32 years old when Empire premiered. 2 scenes on Hoth, one famous line ordering the shield doors closed on Han and Luke, a blink-and-miss-it part for what was then a working-class American carpenter living in London on a one-way airfare paid for by a tax refund check. But here is where the real story begins. 2 years after Empire, Ratzenberger walked into the audition for Cheers. He read for Norm Peterson and could tell within minutes he had not gotten it. So he asked the producers if they had written a bar know-it-all yet, and pitched them a postman named Cliff Clavin on the spot. He played Cliff for 11 seasons. Then, in 1995, came Pixar's Toy Story, and Ratzenberger has voiced a character in every single Pixar feature film since. By one widely cited measure of cumulative box office contribution, he is among the highest-grossing actors in cinema. Most of the audience that has paid him those billions has never knowingly seen his face. In 2026, John Ratzenberger is 78. Star Wars hired him for one scene. Cheers gave him a bar stool. Pixar gave him a piggy bank, a Yeti, and a snowman. The man with the smallest part in Empire turned out to have the biggest career in it. So that is the cast of The Empire Strikes Back. The Jedi, the smuggler, the princess, the gambler, the droids, the Wookiee, the voice, the body, the master, the ghost, the bounty hunter, the rebel, the admiral, and the man on Hoth. Where they are in 2026 is simple. Mark Hamill is 75, Harrison Ford is 83, Billy Dee Williams is 89, Frank Oz is 82, Anthony Daniels is 80, Dennis Lawson is 78, John Ratzenberger is 78. The rest have signed off the way the script always promised they would. Carrie Fisher in 2016, Kenny Baker the same year, Peter Mayhew in 2019, David Prowse and Jeremy Bulloch in 2020, James Earl Jones in 2024, Kenneth Collie in 2025, Alec Guinness, the first to go, in 2000. Every single one of them deserved the legend they made.